Hey, this is EWGF, and we're going to be reviewing PvP parrying. There's a consensus online that parrying another player is impossible due to lag, and it's imprecise, but this really isn't the case. Lag does change it drastically, however. The first thing you need to do is discard all your knowledge of PvE parrying, because this isn't going to help you anymore. There are a lot of little rules and conditions I need to get into before I discuss more common techniques, so let's start reviewing those. The first rule is you need to account for the delay. As such, visual references are no longer going to help you. This is because sight recognition enough isn't going to get you there. In this example, for my parry to be successful, I had 1 frame of time between my opponent's swing startup and my parry startup. This isn't actually physically possible if you factor in the time it takes for you to press a button, the signal to reach the game, and the game to interpret it as a parry and begin your parry. This, like most other successful parries, was a successful guess. The objective of PvP parries is to create situations where you believe your opponent will attack and appropriately parry. The goal of the player attempting this is to accurately read the actions of your opponent and or create conditions that cause them to behave in a certain way. Although some incredibly slow swings can be visually parried, that's only going to cover a very small percentage of the opponents you'll face, and thus it's not very good to you. Anyways, there are actually quite a few other rules to parrying too. Number 2, you can't parry jump attacks, and by that I mean forward and R2 attacks. Other R2 attacks and anything with an airborne animation can still be parried. Except for plunging attacks, I'm not really sure about those. Number 3, you can't parry normal kicks. Forward and R1 special attacks for rapiers and Asian swords can be parried, however. I don't know anything about the worm attack, so don't ask about that. Number 4, you cannot parry whip attacks. That kind of makes sense, I guess. Number 5, you cannot parry dead angle attacks. This stands to reason, you can't block them. Number 6, you can sometimes parry a swing that hits you. This is actually much rarer than it used to be. In Demon Souls it was quite common. In these cases it's still quite easy to land your riposte depending on the kind of hit stun you suffer. Number 7, sometimes you can land what's referred to as a partial parry. In these cases you'll still be penalized stamina. However, you'll not suffer poise damage, and you won't suffer hit stun, and you'll still be able to act normally. Attacks that can't be parried normally can still be partial parried. Number 8. Parries are less successful at the tip of a weapon than at the hilt, to the point of almost impossibility. This characteristic seems to vary by weapon. Generally, you'll want to be very close. It's this feature that actually makes spears incredibly difficult to parry. Number 9. You'll have a fair bit of time between landing your parry and scoring your riposte. You can swap weapons, stances, and move a fair bit. Number 10. Sometimes after a successful parry, you can simply throw a normal swing instead of a special riposte attack, depending on your positioning and your timing. In these cases, it's actually possible to still land your riposte. This actually happens quite a fair bit with players getting used to parries. They'll throw a parry and they'll just throw a normal R1 because they're not used to the timing and the range. You can get around this by simply moving closer to your target and then riposting. The first parry method we're going to discuss is the simplest. It's called a setup parry, and this is the one I recommend learning first. These work simply by parrying the second or third swing in a series of consecutive swings against a raised shield. The trick to this method is blocking all the previous hits except for the one you parry. You use their swing timing as a rhythm for your timing. Each weapon, of course, has a different timing, but for these sorts of parries, you're going to want to mostly limit yourself to great swords, ultra great swords, great axes, and murakumos. The reason being is that this method hinges on people spamming into your block, and weapons such as these with high combo proclivity are often piloted to spam into a block. Also, due to block stuns, with smaller weapons this method won't actually work very well. There are a few advanced tricks to getting around this though. We won't cover them in this video. The method is actually surprisingly accurate once you get the rhythm for each swing. When you're first starting out, I actually recommend arranging a friendly redstone duel and trying them out with unmodified weapons with someone you know. This can give you a pretty good idea how it works. Once you get the hang of that, start trying it in duels. But I don't recommend trying it against everyone that enchants with, Dark Moon Blade +3 because you get crushed. You're gonna die a lot trying this, trust me, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be surprised at how well it works. Let's just watch the rest of these clips. These next couple clips, it's sort of a variation on a setup parry. It's not really unnamed, but let's just call it a tanking parry. This method allows you to parry smaller and faster weapons by using poise and partial parries, and it doesn't rely on blocks. Because of this, it's not restricted to the problems setup parries have when dealing with block stun. In this method, you simply double tap parry against a low poise damaging weapon. You utilize high poise and partials to multiply your resistance to hit stun. The idea behind this is that you're no longer restricted by block stun, and as such you can simply tank the first couple hits without parrying. As such, this is advised for spammy poke weapons such as Balder swords, Asian swords, and katanas. Weapons that can't really combo you to death if you fail. This isn't something you're going to ever want to pull out against Dark Moonblade or anything like that. Since you have to tank hits, it's a lot different taking 300 damage a shot or taking 600 damage a shot. Let's just watch the rest of these clips. The last type of parries are the most advanced. They're called blind parries. The reason they're the most advanced is because they only use visual references and make use of guesswork and prediction. They don't use hits or blocked hits as a meter. This, for all intents and purposes, is a PvE parry adapted to PvP. The way they work is to simply parry before your opponent attacks. To be more accurate, these parries are exactly what I was discussing in the beginning of the video. Properly predicting your opponent's actions and creating situations where you expect them to behave in certain ways. Setup parries and tank parries are more exploitive of certain bad habits your opponent may have. Blind parries, however, are exploitive of inviting your opponent to behave in a certain way, make a certain mistake, or you recognizing patterns in predictable players. Because you're parrying single swings, any weapon or swing may suffice. There's no limit to what you can do, and there's no opponent who won't succumb to this. This is the best parry against high-level players. That being said, it's also the most difficult. It relies on your interpretation of timing based on the flawed delay system in online PvP. This, for example, is the only full duel I'm demonstrating. It exhibits how you can progress from not knowing anything about your opponent to creating a situation in which you feel as though you can parry them. As you can see in this clip, my opponent doesn't give me too much to work with. Aside from that roll BS. But even then, really, I was proactively rolling into that spear poke. However, he likes to come in with the while rolling R1, and after a few misses, I eventually get him. Let's just watch the rest of these clips. This clip here is pretty straightforward. I'm baiting my opponent with fireball cancels and empty swings, and I eventually score the blind. This one right here is an odd parry because it demonstrates how a while dashing attack can leave an opponent sort of behind you, because they carry their momentum. I couldn't land the riposte in this case because, well, I didn't really expect it. I wouldn't expect to see this too much yourself unless you're playing against katana players and you parry their while dashing R1, because that tends to get behind you a fair bit. This clip here with the man serpent's pretty much the same as the first clip. Nothing fancy, just I fish for the while rolling R1 and parry it. This is one of the kind of random lucky parries I got in this video. I pretty much decided to go for it once I saw the kick went right through me. I figured he'd follow it up with something, so I went for it and I got it. I wouldn't expect this too much from a good player. This is another really random one. It's in a situation like that, it's not a terrible play to make a parry as you're both kind of rolling and he's not really in a position to punish you. Something like this, you'll often get a partial, or, you know, you'll just plain, you know, you'll both miss, or he won't even attack, so I figured there's no harm in throwing it out. This was an interesting parry for two reasons. First of all, it's a weird tactic to kind of purposely trade with an opponent, but with like a light damage weapon like an elemental katana, I don't mind doing that. If it comes out favorably in a parry, it was worth the payoff. It also kind of demonstrates how swapping weapons and stances can cause a parry to fail sometimes. It's I could have timed it differently to score the riposte likely, but it's just sometimes when you're doing that kind of thing, it does mess up like this. Basically conditioning my opponent to block and counter-attack my while-dashing attack, and it worked out pretty nicely. I like this parry actually, I think it's pretty neat. And this last one's kind of the same deal with the zweihander. You know, it's not unreasonable for an opponent to, you know, block my one-handed claymore and trade with a zweihander swing. So I eventually got him.
Pretty much it for this week. That's not everything there is to parries, but it's a good start. I got some more videos I'm kind of half working on, half not, and I'll leave you with the honor duel of the week.
Motherfucker got fucked up 'cause he got in the way. Not a lot of things to say. Motherfucker got in the way. Motherfucker got fucked up 'cause he got in the way. Motherfucker got fucked up 'cause he got in the way. Motherfucker got in the way. Motherfucker got fucked up 'cause he got in the way. He must be in a lot of pain. He won't be doing that again. Motherfucker got fucked up 'cause he got in the way. Motherfucker got fucked up 'cause he got in the way. Not a lot of things to say. Still, motherfucker got in the way. Still, motherfucker got fucked up 'cause he got in the way. Like a psychopath, and you don't wanna cross me when I feel this way. Motherfucker got fucked up 'cause he got